Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to episode 91 of Fracking Nightmare. Now, it's been a few weeks since we last put out an episode of Fracking Nightmare, and it'll be a few weeks more before the next one. And one of the things that has occurred in that time is a little bit of cost accounting and looking at the expense associated with putting these shows out. A big part of the cost is actually getting to the studio, because my activities take me all around the country, and often I'm doing a 600-mile round trip to come down to the southwest to do the episodes of Humanity vs. Insanity and Fracking Nightmare. So I'm certainly operating on fumes for reasons that regular viewers will be well aware. But if you can support the episodes, the future episodes, by making a small donation, then please go to either my website, which is www.ianrcrane.com, or frackingnightmare.com. And you will see on the left-hand side of the homepage the opportunity there to either make a one-off donation or regular monthly donations. And as much as we would love to be able to do these shows without asking for financial support, we have no other means of income. We don't have any funding from any other quarters. So if you want to see episodes of Fracking Nightmare remain on UK column, then every little helps. It really does, and it's very much appreciated. And certainly those few people that have continued to support us it's almost 3 years now since the first episode of Fracking Nightmare. It is very much appreciated. And one thing that we're certainly not in line for is the £10,000 frack pot that Teresa May has allegedly to the equation. Now, call me a skeptic, but Teresa May knows very, very well that communities will do their own research, and they will very quickly realise that this is very much tongue-in-cheek, because the likelihood of communities actually seeing any significant funding, and certainly individual households seeing the promised shekels from the British government here, are slim to none, for reasons that we will explain. So this is the headline from the Mail Online, and I am going to make the observation that the Mail Online, which is reportedly the most widely read online newspaper in the UK, has a very different editorial team than the printed version. And over the last few years, the Mail Online has produced a number of articles which clearly demonstrate that the unconventional gas industry is an absolute liability to communities where it establishes a footprint. But here was the headline, and this was pretty much actually also taken from the printed version, or the other way around, whichever. Will you hit the frack pot? Teresa May's stunning cash payouts to families, with households offered up to £13,000 in the Great Shale Bonanza. Families will be given cash handouts to boost the drive for shale gas fracking. Homes in areas where the gas can be extracted will be given the cash. The latest move by the new government is to move away from Cameron's energy plan. Really? The Prime Minister, Teresa May, will unveil the energy scheme Monday. That was last Monday. And it would seem that the rules of the game are such that the likelihood of anybody ever receiving any funding is remote. But what it has done in the short term, it's certainly pitched community against community, and it's even caused friction within households, i.e. those households that think that they meet the criterion for these payments. Now, this is a graphic also from the Daily Mail, and what they've done here is they have literally picked on 8 targeted areas and taken the 10 million and then divided it by the number of houses within the particular area. And number 1 is Kirby Misperton, which is, of course, currently the only location that has been granted permission to conduct a hydraulic fracturing operation to test the viability of the unconventional gas resources lying below the North York or the southern edge of the North Yorkshire moors. And of course, this looks like a big number, doesn't it? £64,935 to each of the 154 households in Kirkby Misperton. But there are a number of other villages that lie not too far away, such as Hapton. And are those residents going to be in line for a payout? Well, under the rules of the scheme, probably not. But I mean, let's just take a look at the list again here, because number 2 on the list is Albury in Surrey, which is just outside Guildford. Now, this is in serious commuter belt. And let me make the observation, and if I can make the observation, then you can bet your bottom dollar that the intelligence within the unconventional gas industry will also be capable of making the same observation. And right now, Surrey is an open door, and the unconventional gas industry will be looking upon the North Weald as the low-hanging fruit. Because for whatever reason, apart from a handful of residents in Surrey, the dormitory community, i.e. people who walk out of their front door at 7 o'clock to catch the train to go to their office in the city, conduct their daily business, and then come home at 7 o'clock in the evening, shut the front door behind them, and don't really give too much of concern about what's going on outside, don't have the time, even if they have the inclination, to put up any kind of meaningful opposition. So the community of Albury, which iGas is targeting there, and they've got the license to drill there, and there's 496 homes in the area, according to the Daily Mail, which would amount to 20,000. Now, this is a community that I'm sure could do something with the 20,000, but they don't really need it. This is a fairly well-off commuter town, but nonetheless, they are quite probably at greater risk than communities in the north, who right now are far better educated, they are far better prepared, and have much greater cohesion and commitment to fighting this insidious industry. I mean, the other areas that are targeted, Balcombe, although Quadrilla don't look as though they're going to be going back there anytime soon, Kingsworthy in Hampshire, Portland-le-Fylde in Lancashire, and of course we are expecting Greg Clark to make his decision or announcement sometime in the next 6 or 7 weeks. He certainly has to make the announcement before, I think it's October 6th, and we can pretty much predict what he's going to say. And he is going to rule that the Lancashire County Council decision to not permit drilling and exploitation of unconventional gas resources at the Rossiter site will be upheld. But the Preston New Road location will, in fact, be the Lancashire County Council decision will be overruled, and the likelihood is that Preston New Road will be given the go-ahead. But, of course, there's a long way to go there because Quadrilla don't even have a well pad, so it's construction right from the get-go. And what is interesting is that I think it's October the 6th is literally just one day before the injunction put on the Preston New Road well site by Judge Hodge 2 years ago will have expired. So there will no longer be an injunction preventing protectors from doing any kind of blockading at the Preston New Road site. So a wonderful piece of synchronicity there. Other areas, Davy Hume, Piddle Valley in Dorset, which is really just outside Swanage, and then the Forest of Dean. Now, the Forest of Dean looking pretty sick there because there's only £293 on offer to the potential 34,150 homes. So the bottom line is, Teresa May must know that households that are effectively being offered a bribe to allow this industry into their community will do their own research. And how are they going to decide whether or not the democratic mandate within each community is upheld? Will there be a referendum of every community to determine whether or not there is a social license, because the likelihood is that if they do that, then if previous ballots of local communities are anything to go by, it will be 90% plus that will reject the industry, even with this kind of money at stake or on offer. And let's just remind ourselves that, of course, this is the spread of land right across the north of England. In fact, it's really only the High Pennines that have been exempted from being licensed for exploitation by the unconventional gas companies, otherwise known, of course, as the mother frackers. Well, right on the front line, of course, is Kirkby Misperton, #1 on the Daily Mail's list there. And Kirkby Misperton is a very interesting case in point, and I think it's rather fortuitous in many respects that Kirkby Misperton is the next targeted community, because the entire village of Kirkby Misperton lies within 1 kilometre of the well site. And this is well within the area. I mean, in Australia, and those who have seen my documentary, Voices from the Gasfields, will have seen the devastation there as presented by the Monks and the Jenkins. And of course, there were other families who have also suffered, but weren't quite so comfortable going on camera. And some had taken payments from the gas companies, but regretted that decision. But nonetheless, the fact that they had taken the payment and the fact that they had signed a confidentiality agreement meant that they couldn't express their concerns on camera. But in Australia, there is a 2-mile limit between any fracked gas well and any residence. But here on screen, what you see is that between the well site, that's the well site down in the bottom left-hand corner there, and then over here we have Flamingo Land, which is Yorkshire's most significant revenue earner in the tourist industry. Now, of course, there's not a lot of chance of Third Energy trying to roll the trucks into the Kirkby Misperton well site during the high season. But once the schools return in early September, then, of course, the likelihood is that Third Energy will be looking to get the trucks rolling into the well site. And fortunately, Flamingo Land have finally, and I think probably perhaps even a little bit too late, but nonetheless, before the council hearing, the planning committee hearing in Northallerton a couple of months ago, Flamingo Land did actually express their opposition to the industry. Now, one can understand a member of the business community not wishing to thwart further industrial growth in the area, but eventually somebody at Flamingo Land obviously spent some time doing their research and came to the conclusion that this industry was not conducive with having their animal park, and there's a number of rare species there at Flamingo Land. So if you do want to visit Flamingo Land, my counsel is get there sooner rather than later, because once Third Energy actually start rolling the trucks in, I don't think anyone is going to want to visit this part of Yorkshire. Or in fact, you'd be playing Russian roulette if you did. But here it is. There we have it. This is Flamingo Land. And look, this is the entire village, pretty much, of Kirkby Misperton, all within that 1 kilometre belt. So basically, all of these people who reside in these properties are effectively very much in the front line of the sacrifice zone. And make no bones about it, this is what it is. It is a sacrifice zone. And of course, the people who reside in all of the other targeted areas across the north of England will be watching very, very closely as to what happens at Kirkby Misperton. Now, the reality is that these payments are not going to manifest anytime soon, and that's primarily because these companies operate with massive debt. So let's have a look at Third Energy. Now, this is Third Energy. This is the company that has permission to hack their existing well, known as KM8, at Kirby Misperton. And what you see here is that this is from Company Check. So you can find the latest financial reports on any UK company on the website, companycheck. That's check as in CHECK, companycheck.co.uk. And here we have Third Energy, and you can see this is the branch Third Energy. It has its headquarters at the Napton generating station. Let's go back to the correct slide there. And as you can see, they have a current net worth of minus £46.8 million, a net worth. So although it's reported that their current liabilities are just 5.4 million, assets are 1.8 million, and cash, available cash, which isn't a great deal really, operating capital £54.3 thousand. So this is a company that's operating right on the edge. But who does it owe this 46.8 million to? Well, of course, this is a company that is 97% owned by Barclays Bank, which is, I believe, registered in the Cayman Islands. So consequently, and Third Energy is the same model as the likes of Rathlin Energy in East Yorkshire. And Rathlin Energy has a reported net worth from 18 months ago of minus 25 million. For some reason, the latest Rathlin numbers don't seem to be available on Company Check. But my anticipation is that when those numbers do manifest, then the negative net worth will be in the region probably of 30 to 35 million or so. And Rathlin owe the money to their parent company, Sunderland Holdings, which is registered in Jersey. So all of these companies are operating in massive debt, so that when they do start producing, if they start producing, then they will be writing off any surplus for a long time to come before they reach the point of profitability, at which point, of course, they will be liable for tax. But one needs to understand that the rules of the game also allow these companies to write off the decommissioning costs. And whatever those decommissioning costs are is calculated like that. Lick your finger, stick it in the air, see which way the wind's blowing, come up with a number, and make sure you come up with a number that's big enough to make sure that you never pay any taxes. So you get the picture here. You see that the likelihood of any community ever getting anything, let alone £10,000, they're not likely to get 10p, because there won't be any money from taxation. And when we get onto INEOS, which is a whole different ballgame, and INEOS have the lion's share of the licenses across the north of England, then, well, those communities living above INEOS licenses basically will be paying for the privilege for a long, long, long time to come without any recompense whatsoever. So on that note, let's take a short break. We're going to take a short musical interlude. And this is from a gentleman who I came across at an event a few months ago now, George Nicholas, and he played a track at that event called The Folly of Fracking. And he told me that basically it was the anti-fracking community that had inspired him to write this song. So this is a song from his album Nature's Child, and his band is called Cernunnos Rising. So take a listen to this.
Of our sons and daughters, the balance of nature is frail. Wisdom is lacking, this folly of fracking revealed in the rape of the shale. So drilling with haste turns water to paste, and cancer is let out of jail. No one is backing this folly of fracking, but those wisdom is frail. And the sun and the wind and the waves ignore our countless toxic potions poured by corporate children, dark beyond compare. Down below, the demons walking out beneath our feet is broken ignorance and greed just don't care. Those who poison our children's well, hope you don't believe in hell. There's a place for you and your kind. 'Cause when you take such drastic measures, disrespect our mother's treasures, why do you think she'd grant you peace of mind? Children's eyes become wise and older, the elders' wisdom seems much colder. Disrespect for those come laid bare. And all the ones in unborn time find no reason nor no rhyme, legacy of those who did not care. The sun and the wind and the waves ignored while countless toxic potions poured by corporate children, dark beyond compare. Down below, the demons walking earth beneath our feet is broken ignorance and greed just don't care. Some look down in deep despair, some look up in earnest prayer. Water is our gift from the divine. We are lost for words to say about the foolish greed today. Consequence is yours as well as mine. Raise a glass of fire to you, then your childish wisdom too. The big beneath your ivory tower, bring you down and take your power. We will do as history shows, stand together to oppose stupid blind ambitions like sad the fool who tries to frack. The sun and the wind and the waves ignored while countless toxic potions poured by corporate children, dark beyond compare. Down below, the demons walking earth beneath our feet is broken ignorance and greed just don't care. The sun and the wind and the waves ignore while countless toxins potions poured by corporate children, dark beyond compare. Down below, the demons walking earth beneath our feet is broken ignorance and greed just don't care. The sun and the wind and the waves ignored while countless toxic potions poured by corporate children, dark beyond compare. Down below, the demons walking earth beneath our feet is broken ignorance and greed just don't care.
Well, there we go. That was George Nicholas and Cernunnos Rising from the album Nature's Child. And here we have the picture of that on screen there. Nature's Child, and an excellent album and available through the usual sources and, of course, via iTunes. And I'm sure that if anyone's got an anti-fracking event coming up, then if it's certainly anywhere around the north of England and George and his band are available, give them a call and they'll certainly add something to your event. So let's get back to the north of England, the sacrifice zone. And we talked about Ineos, and we were talking about the bribery, the £10 million plucked out of the air numbers, because Teresa May and the Treasury know very well that no one's ever going to see it. But yeah, that's not the point. The point is to try to persuade people to embrace this industry. Well, maybe it isn't, maybe it is. Teresa May trying to find an exit strategy because she's obviously inherited David Cameron and George Osborne's energy policy. Yet we've seen over the past few days that Scotland actually generated more electricity from renewables than it did by hydrocarbons. So that goes to show that it is possible to move into the alternative arena. So consider the possibility that Teresa May is actually doing the anti-fracking community a massive favour. She certainly put the issue very much onto the front pages of the entire national press last weekend. Now, obviously, one can argue that the timing was chosen when the number of people buying newspapers is down due to people being on vacation. But nonetheless, we know that this issue is being discussed more widely. The number of visits to various anti-fracking websites and Facebook pages has increased significantly over the past 10 days. So consider the possibility that Teresa May is actually trying to find an acceptable exit strategy where she can say to the industry, well, we tried everything. We offered them like £10,000 a head and that wasn't enough. And well, there's no more money available because we know that even that doesn't really exist. So maybe she's actually trying to help us, because if she wasn't, of course, she'd have to be an out-and-out sociopath, believing that people are prepared to sacrifice their health and their family's health in return for a few measly bucks, pounds, whatever. Well, INEOS. Now, INEOS, of course, as we said, have a significant spread of the licenses. And there is also much conjecture that INEOS is hovering around looking at the possibility of acquiring iGas, although the stock price has taken a bit of a hike on the basis of the possibility of getting a social license. How stupid can some investors be? Well, hey, we did try and warn them many, many times over the previous 3 years, and there's a mug punter born every minute. Well, INEOS is a slightly different kettle of fish, because Jim Ratcliffe, oh, there he is, on the left of the picture there, the chairman of INEOS, has stated that the gas that INEOS exploits from its licenses will not be put into the national grid, that the gas exploited by INEOS will be used as feedstock for their chemical plants. So on the basis that they're not selling it, therefore there's no profit, and therefore there's no taxation. So that means that the people who live in the INEOS licenses need to understand right from the get-go that they're not even candidates for any kind of payment. So Jim Ratcliffe, of course, isn't likely to spell that out. And, he will leave people thinking whatever it is that they want to think based on what the British government has put out. But meanwhile, of course, INEOS, like many of the other companies, does try to bribe communities more subtly. And here we have the INEOS Run for Fun. Well, I must confess that I won't say it was a source of amusement. That would be somewhat disingenuous. But it's really quite interesting that in Falkirk, in Scotland, there is an athletics stadium that's less than 800 metres from the INEOS refinery. And, when I left Falkirk, because my lungs are not used to the toxicity in the atmosphere there, then I had a very dry throat and, in fact, a sore throat for a few days. And why people would want to hyperventilate just 800 metres from this facility remains a mystery to me. I guess it's a bit like having athletes who use chemicals to enhance their performance. And in Falkirk, people are breathing in toxic fumes that will have a negative effect on their performance. I suppose, in theory, it's equal for everybody. Well, like I said, INEOS is probably hovering over iGas, although the potential acquisition of iGas is probably a bit unlikely on the basis of it would certainly go up before the Mergers and Monopolies Commission. But the iGas stock, the stupidity of IGAS investors never fails to amaze me. Obviously, the verbal vitriol that was trotted out, particularly when the stock price was tanking, was really quite something to behold. But nonetheless, IGAS stockholders took heart from Teresa May's announcement. And as you can see here on screen, the stock price actually moved from about 11p last Friday week ago, and it jumped to 18.14 pence by Monday. And that was an increase of some 27%. So obviously those who were looking to make a short-term gain probably made out like bandits. But in the long term, of course, look at this. Here's the true story. This was January 2014, right at the heart of the Barton Moss campaign. This was during the summer months. Obviously, the price of oil was falling quite significantly. And if we look at the early episodes of Fracking Nightmare, every week I was encouraging the investors to get out while they had an opportunity. But no, they had to hang on in there. And then the stock tanked. And as you can see now, for best part of a year plus, 18 months almost, it's been wallowing around about the 20 pence mark, dropping down to about 12 pence and then coming up to 18 pence last week. So anyway, my counsel to IGAS investors is, if you're sitting on it at 18p and you bought at 12, best sell now, because you ain't going to get any profit out of this anytime soon. And Stephen Ebola, the chairman of IGAS, will of course tell you different, but that's what they do. If anybody wants to see the magnitude of cognitive dissonance, then simply search for Francis Egan's interview on Hard Talk from January of this year. And it is incredible. It is a clinical demonstration of cognitive dissonance. Either that or he's lying, and I doubt that, so it must be cognitive dissonance. Well, meanwhile, of course, another well site that has been in the news, the Gatwick Gusher, near, well, at Horse Hill, near Gatwick Airport. And of course, this was the domain of David Lenegas. He's since taken a back seat after resigning from the board of UCOG last May, so that's a little over 15 months ago. But he's re-emerged, and he's now got some significant interests in the licenses on the Isle of Wight. Now, let's understand what David Lenegas's role. David Lenegas is an arch blagger. He's very, very good at what he does. And so companies bring David Lenegas onto the payroll with the sole objective of blagging to get the stock price up so that mug punters can be persuaded to part with their hard-earned cash, because you're not likely to see any of the institutional investments investing in the sort of penny stock companies that Lenegas hangs around with. So David Lenegas has a very interesting relationship with the AIM, the alternative investment market. But the alternative investment market is effectively a money laundering scheme. And David Lenegas, of course, is at the forefront of that. And for whatever reason, David Lenegas cut me off of his Twitter feed. Can't think why he would do that. But anyway, nonetheless, if you're watching, David, yeah, good luck with your Isle of Wight prospects, because the Isle of Wight is probably the easiest location in the country for the protectors to make it rather difficult for you to make any money. But you're not really interested in that, like because you know very well that the company's never going to get the bits in the ground. You are simply looking to fleece punters of their hard-earned income in the short term. And you, of course, will walk away with a significant check, just like you did with UCOG. So what's going on here? Well, people are being asked to effectively play Russian roulette. The CEOs, whether it's Francis Egan, whether it's John Doerr, whether it's David Montague-Smith, whether it's Gerwyn Llewellyn Williams, whether it's Stephen Ebola, whoever it is, they know very well that they are encouraging people who live in their sacrifice zones to play Russian roulette with their and their family's health. Because over the last few years, the number of scientific reports that have come into the public domain, which irrefutably prove that there is not only contamination of the water, the soil, the air, and significant negative health impacts on humans and on livestock. It's undeniable, yet they will deny it, and they will just keep harping on that Britain has the gold standard in place. Well, this is a report that I referenced in a couple of interviews I did last week. This one's from Yale University. This was published almost exactly 2 years ago in September of 2014. And this was a Yale-led study has found a greater prevalence of health symptoms reported amongst residents living close to natural gas wells, including those drilled by hydraulic fracturing. The study appears online September 10th in Environmental Health Perspectives, a journal of the National Institutes of Health. It goes on to say, little is known about the environmental and public health impact of certain natural gas extraction techniques, including hydraulic fracturing, also known as fracking. Let me repeat that. This is from Yale. It says little is known. And despite the increasing number of reports that have been published over the last couple of years or so, it's still a case that little is known. Here's a report from, I think, nearly 4 years ago now. No, certainly 3 years ago. This is impacts on gas drilling on human and animal health by a vet, Michelle Bamberger, and her husband, Professor Robert Oswald. And this is the report that was published in Scientific Solutions, which looked at the impact on primarily agriculture, both arable and livestock farming. Now, inevitably, reading academic reports is not everybody's cup of tea. So last September, they reproduced it in a somewhat more readable form as this book, The Real Cost of Fracking: How America's Shale Gas Boom is Threatening Our Families, Pets and Food. Now, Robert Oswald actually wrote an open letter to David Cameron. The open letter was certainly published in The Guardian. I also believe Independent in September of 2013, right at the heart of the Borkum campaign. But here we are, 3 years on with a lot more academic reports available, and still this industry trots out this, their lies, basically, their lies, their deceit, their obfuscation. And they literally think that the British public are so stupid that they won't do their own research. And by the way, you will never, ever hear the government or the industry say, don't take our word for it, please do your own research, please look at this for yourself, and you will see how not only amazingly safe it is, but how everybody who lives in the areas of fracked wells benefits. And the reason they won't say it is because they know it's not true. So all they do is keep saying that those people who are against fracking are scaremongering. Well, we'll have a look at a little bit of the scaremongering and those who claim to be experts on behalf of the unconventional gas industry in part 3. Meanwhile, we're going to take a break, and during this break, we're going to look at a short video, and this is thanks to Durham Greenpeace, who put together this video from the rally in York just, gosh, I've lost track of time, just literally 8 days ago.
Well, there's a war going on outside, but only you and mine. Man, you're feeling bad. Boy, you're full of spite. For this, your bitter life, where nothing just won't do. boy dreams, the man deems himself a king, but that bird won't
We're going to win this war.
And welcome back to part 3. And I really have lost track of time because that event was actually 2 weeks ago, the last weekend of July 2016 in York. And it was obviously the first week of the school holidays. And it was tough to know what sort of numbers were going to turn out at York. But at the end of the day, there was certainly in excess of 2,000 people from all over the country, but primarily from North Yorkshire, making their views known. And what was really interesting was, of course, York was absolutely packed out. And the number of people who were visiting York from elsewhere in the country who showed interest, who took the flyers, was truly remarkable. And after the event, I ran into some people who kept me talking for about half an hour because they wanted more information on what was going on with fracking in the UK. So, we think that pretty much everybody must be aware of it. And, people have some awareness, but unless they are literally right up close and personal to a targeted well site, then I guess it's something that, is always happening somewhere else. But increasingly, people are starting to realize that this is something that should give them cause for concern. Now, a few weeks ago, I attended another event in Warrington with radioactive waste management. And the link here is that this is another industry that thinks it can bribe people into playing Russian roulette with their health. And in fact, this is an article from the Mail Online again, from July of 2 years ago now, but this is still valid. Communities could be handed a £40 million bribe just to consider a nuclear waste dump 7 times larger than the Albert Hall being built beneath them. Well, I think this is a little bit of a red herring because it's becoming increasingly clear that radioactive waste management have a problem with the phenomenal volume of highly toxic radioactive waste that they actually have no idea what to do with. And certainly not since dumping at sea was outlawed some 33 years ago now. So radioactive waste management are tasked with finding a location in the UK, sorry, not in the UK, because Scotland have said that we're not interested. So within England and Wales, that is prepared to accept the possibility of having this waste deposited beneath them in a purpose-built repository. But it is my opinion, and I am even more sure about this now, having listened to the presentations at this event in Warrington, that the radioactive waste management team know very well that they're not likely to find a community that's going to accept their 40 million, because they know very well that the likelihood of the area becoming a cancer cluster is increased very significantly. So it's my opinion that the Texan that's been put in charge of this project, of finding the location, a lady by the name of Natalie Ayler, and it had to be somebody not of the country, because it has to be somebody that has no emotional attachment whatsoever to the country, because otherwise they certainly wouldn't consider putting this toxic waste beneath any community. But we have to, I think, be very conscious of the research being undertaken by Professor Fergus Gibb at Sheffield University, and I shall be talking more about this at a screening of Voices from the Gasfields in Stocksbridge in early September, and I'll give more details of that a bit later. But Professor Fergus Gibb is the head of a project which is looking at deep geological disposal of toxic nuclear waste by literally burying the highly toxic nuclear waste in specially designed capsules that can be dropped down deep wells, i.e. wells that are being claimed that are being drilled for the purpose of exploiting unconventional gas. So we have to watch this very, very closely. Now, we mustn't ignore, of course, the underground coal gasification, and although both Clough and Five Quarters aren't showing any signs of wanting to exercise their licenses. And in fact, in a recent communication, Clough stated that underground coal gasification was no longer part of their core business strategy. But until such time as they renounce the licenses, then we have to watch very closely. And of course, in Australia, they've had the terrible experience with Link Energy in Chinchilla. And this was a 13-year experiment of underground coal gasification, where effectively the coal seams were set alight, and they're out of control, and it's polluted an area some 320 square kilometres. And of course, this came to the fore very much with the suicide of George Bender last October. And earlier this year, his daughter Helen was a guest on Fracking Nightmare, and she discussed the trauma that the family had been through in dealing not only with the coal seam gas exploitation, but also the underground coal gasification literally beneath their properties. So that's one to watch for. But another project that I'm going to be getting involved in early September is the story of Crawberry Hill. And very few people, even amongst the anti-fracking community, are fully aware that Crawberry Hill is still the only site where the company, Rathlin Energy, had approval to conduct a flow test, i.e. a test frack. But the site has now been returned to former agricultural glory. And this is the site as it looks today. And there's a rumour being put around that apparently it's going to become a chicken farm. That's going to be an interesting one. But the reason that it has been returned to its former agricultural glory is due to a combination of the protection community, but then very much the local community stepping up to the plate and making it very clear that Rathlin Energy did not have a social license. So earlier in 2015, Rathlin announced that they were pulling out of their licensed area in Northern Ireland. And then on August the 12th last year, so almost exactly 1 year ago to this week, then Rathlin Energy announced that they would be pulling out of Crawberry Hill and turning the site back to its agricultural glory. And then literally a month or so ago, they returned their environmental permit. And we'll be producing a documentary looking at the Battle of Crawberry Hill and the way in which the local community were absolutely central in running Rathlin off. And of course, hopefully this will be influential and inspiring to other communities who have yet to endure this insidious industry. Now, and by the way, I should actually make the observation, this is from the Hull Daily Mail, and where the Hull Daily Mail paid full tribute to the local community for their consistent and persistent efforts in raising awareness and getting the local community to support them in forcing Rathlin to rescind the environmental agency permit. Now, we get, in the anti-fracking community, we get help from some very interesting quarters, maybe Teresa May even. But this was published in the Mail on Sunday again this week. TV mindbender brainwashes teens to oppose fracking with Thorpe Park thought ride. Well, this is a reference to Derren Brown and Derren Brown's Ghost Train. And this is one of the promo posters of the event. But the article talks about the subliminals that Derren Brown has introduced into his Ghost Train ride, trying to get people to look at the potential risks. No water, no future. The end of the line is stop fracking. Leave the stuff in underground, etc., etc. And a lot of this artwork is in the area where people are queuing up. And as Derren Brown has shown on his TV programs, then he is certainly an expert at influencing people and modifying their behavior. So maybe even without Derren Brown, we will still get the success, but we take every help we can get from any quarter. But here was a great article from the Lancashire Press last week. The anti-fracking Lancashire residents slam the cash bribes. We won't be bought. Well, and I'm pretty sure that anyone looking at this for themselves will come to that conclusion. But for the last item of episode 91 of Fracking Nightmare, I want to discuss this article. Now, The Sun, and full credit to Liverpool for still not allowing The Sun in many newsagents there after, what is it now, 28 years. But this article, Don't Be So Fracking Ridiculous by Matt Ridley. Now, of course, everybody knows who Matt Ridley is. Well, Matt Ridley and Rupert Murdoch are certainly hoping that you don't know who Matt Ridley is. So let's just take a look at this article, or certainly part of this article. And I'm going to look at the closing paragraphs here, because what this says is, what Matt Ridley says is, fracking for shale gas has been a triumphant success in America, bringing cheap, clean energy in abundance. Done properly, fracking does not contaminate ground waste, cause surface pollution, undermine buildings, or leak gas. The cracks it makes in rocks are millimeters wide. The stuff is pumped down hole into rocks rich in oily chemicals, and is more than 99% water and sand. The rest is highly diluted versions of chemicals you keep under your sink. If Britain is to lead the world, we have to get better at standing up to the anti-technology bullies. And then it says, Matt Ridley is the author of books, including The Evolution of Everything, How Ideas Emerge. Now, apart from the fact that this being extremely simplistic, I'm not going to make any comment about the target audience. But nonetheless, this is extremely simplistic. It is ridiculously superficial. But obviously, once again, you notice that Matt Ridley doesn't make any comment about encouraging people to do their own research. Just simply take Matt Ridley's word for it. But who is Matt Ridley? Well, Matt Ridley is actually Viscount Matthew White Ridley, who is a Conservative member of the House of Lords. And Viscount Ridley, on the UK Parliament website, states that he sits on the Science and Technology Committee, And then in his professional life, it lists that he's a columnist at the Times since 2010, freelance contributor at the Wall Street Journal, and then an author of various books over the last 20 years or so, and a fellow of the Royal Society of Literature, a fellow of the Academy of Medical Sciences, and the author of The Evolution of Everything. Well, there's something missing from this resume, something very, very significant. And of course, if it's missing, then the likelihood is that Viscount Matthew White Ridley doesn't want people to know about it. And of course, that is his association with Northern Rock. When he sat on the board of Northern Rock, the first financial institution to collapse in September 2007, which effectively signaled, what was going to happen over the following 12 months for those people who were paying attention. And this is how the stock price of Northern Rock fell from 1,200 pence, or just over 1,200 pence in February of 2007. But look at this. This is where it tanked when it collapsed in early September of 2007. And then finally, shares were suspended in 2008. And that pretty much was the starting gun for the global financial collapse. And Matthew Ridley was right at the heart of it. And in an article in the Daily Telegraph, published, I think, in August 2010, so exactly 6 years ago, the Northern Rock chief admits to catastrophic black mark. Once again, he prefers to be known by the name of Matt Ridley. The former chairman of the failed bank says he's filled with remorse for what happened. But bet he didn't lose very much. And here's the article. It says the former chairman of Northern Rock, Matt Ridley, has described his leadership of the failed bank as a catastrophic black mark on his CV. Well, of course, it's not a black mark on his CV because it's not on his CV, because he decided to leave it off. He goes on to say, I have nothing but remorse for my role in what happened. I've apologised and explained as much as I can about what happened before the Treasury Select Committee. And the final paragraph there, he says, we were all taken by surprise by that. There was almost nobody who saw it coming. Those who did were not in the right place to warn anyone else. Northern Rock ended up suffering a fate no different from any other mortgage bank. They all disappeared as a result of the crisis, and I learned a lot. Well, Matthew Ridley demonstrated basically that he knew nothing about finance. Appleby was the chief executive who had no background in finance. His background was marketing. Adam Applegarth, that's the one. He was the guy who basically led Northern Rock. And basically, as the chairman, Viscount Matthew Ridley did nothing to stop him. And when it collapsed, it was basically 80 times over-leveraged. So this is a classic example. And I've learned something today because I was looking for the opposite of the Midas touch, i.e. where everything you touch turns to shit. And apparently the opposite of the Midas touch is the Siddham touch, the ability to screw up anything and everything. Well, that's Viscount Matthew Ridley. So I think we can safely say that Viscount Matthew White Ridley knows as much about unconventional gas exploitation as he does about finance. So zero credibility there. So, but don't take my word for it. Hey, do your own research and take a look at all the people that are being trotted out as protagonists for an industry that leaves a trail of devastation in its wake. Well, finally, some upcoming events. I briefly mentioned this, a screening that I should be hosting of Voices from the Gasfields on Thursday, the 8th of September at 7 p.m. at the venue on Manchester Road, 650 Manchester Road, Stocksbridge, S36 1AJ. And protagonists for the industry are more than welcome. We'll have an open Q&A at the end of the event, and I will certainly be encouraging everyone there not to take anything they see in the film at face value or to take anything I say at face value. They must do their own research. Meanwhile, not this coming weekend, the weekend after, the August Bank Holiday weekend, I shall be participating in Wakefest 2016. the location of which is in Lancashire. I gather it's near Blackrod. It's not far from Horwich. But the exact location apparently will be revealed 24 hours before the event. But you can reserve your place at btbatb.co.uk/Wakefest 2016. BTBATB, by the way, stands for Beat the Bailiffs and the Banks. Well, beating the banks ain't going to be too difficult if they're all run by the likes of Viscount Matthew White Ridley. Meanwhile, of course, if you do want to see Fracking Nightmare continue on air, then please do consider making a contribution to the running costs. And by the way, any revenue from sales of products on my website goes directly into my activities, 90% of which are focused on trying to ensure that this insidious industry does not gain a foothold in this beautiful country of ours. Thanks for joining me tonight, and episode 92 of Fracking Nightmare will be in September, the exact date to be confirmed, and from that point forward, then Fracking Nightmare will be back on a regular schedule. Thanks very much for joining me. Look forward to seeing you again soon.